2020 Historic Site Preservation Board monthly meeting. After being dark in August, it's wonderful to once again to be in session to discuss some very interesting topics that we have for tonight. May we have a roll call, please?
Yes, Member Nelson.
Oh, go ahead.
Just raise your hand. I guess Flynn may have your things turned off. Member Kaiser.
Here.
Member Dixon is excused. Member Rosenau is excused. Member Huff.
Here.
And Chair Burkett.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. May we have a posting of the agenda, please?
The agenda for this meeting was posted on public review at the City Hall Bulletin Board on the west side of Council Chambers and at the Planning Department counter in accordance with applicable law.
Does the board have any revisions to the agenda? If not, I'd like to make a motion to accept the agenda. Do I have a second?
Oh, second.
Okay, I have a motion by Burkett and a second by, we had a tie with Member Nelson. Okay, any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Let's move on to public content. This time has been set aside for members of the public to address the Historic Site Preservation Board on agenda items and items of general interest within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board. Although the Historic Preservation Board values your comments pursuant to the Brown Act, it generally cannot take any action on items not listed on the posted agenda. There will be 3 minutes assigned for each speaker. Testimony for public hearings will be taken at the time of the hearing, and we have one tonight. Staff, has anyone requested to speak at public comments?
Yes, Mr. Chair. I forwarded to you this evening prior to tonight's meeting 2 emails. One from an individual named Sierra Trujillo, who is representing the owner of the Racquet Club project. So you received an email from me tonight with her public comment, and I have invited her to participate and speak during public comment if she wishes to do so. And I believe on your screen, she is the person individually there listed as C. Lane. A second individual submitted written comment tonight, Mr. Mayers, who is also here on your screen tonight. And so I believe both of them will be able to speak to you directly, as well as the written comments that I did forward to you by those individuals.
Okay, wonderful. Could you invite them to speak now?
Yes, and I'm going to look to Flynn. Flynn, can you activate a microphone and we can start with Mr. Mayers if you like?
Oh, okay. Just one moment, please. And let me just activate him here. Okay. Mr. Mayers, if you would like to begin.
Sure. I can't see anything. I trust you can see me.
Yes, we can.
Okay. Actually, my statement pretty much makes my point that this has gone on for a really long time, and we do support the historical designation. We would just like to make sure that something is done and that some of the historical aspects of the project that have been harmed by the passage of time, that there be some responsibility assigned to the current owners. You know, the project has deteriorated in many ways needlessly, and you know, many reasons have been given, such as the economy and the politics. But the Racquet Club is iconic, and the communities surrounding the Racquet Club actually are, you know, part of the community. And these communities, such as club condos, garden villas, as well as the colony, as well as the neighborhood, has suffered. And, we would like to see some responsibility and some commitment to go forward to maintain the integrity of this valuable property. And that's my statement. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you. And I believe you live at the Colony next door,
Yes,
correct? Okay. Okay, thank you so much. Appreciate
you're welcome.
presentation. Mr. Lyon.
Yes, the next individual who may wish to speak is listed on your screen as C. Lane. Director Fagg, if you were able to activate her microphone if she wishes to speak.
Yep, I'm here. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I represent the owners of the Racquet Club, Olivia Communities, and I have been working on their behalf since 2011 when they purchased the property to pursue development or a sale. And I just wanted to speak tonight to address the board and just let them know that, Olivia Communities is very invested in seeing a development on the Racquet Club site, and they very much want to see what's right for the property and the community. But unfortunately, we have been marketing the property for so long and met with, dozens and dozens and dozens of developers and historic developers and hoteliers. We even had a developer in escrow last year that was a low density 5-star hotel that spent, a lot of time and effort. But what we've run up against is the entire site being classified as historic, meaning a lot of these buildings and all these structures being restored really is not viable for all these developers. This is market feedback. This is not our opinion. This is something that we've experienced just by being out to the market and been on the market for this period of time. So we would just, urge you to consider that.
Thank you. Mr. Lyon, if we could have a separate meeting to, I think, clarify some points. I think that it would be very, very important to have that conversation. And we cannot do that tonight, but that's what I would recommend that we do after hearing the comments, which we very much appreciate.
Yes, we can arrange for something like that.
Good, that'd be great. Okay, so, all right, thank you. Anyone else, Mr. Lyon, that has applied?
Mr. Chair, those are the only ones who had contacted me to speak. The other individuals on your screen, the person that just came on, it says Mike's iPhone, is speaking on behalf of Camino Marisol. R&B Marshall is speaking on behalf of the Franz Alexander residence. The other individuals, the phone number 909 is Stephen Vaught, who wrote the historic nomination on that, so he's available to answer any questions. The other individual names here, I do not recognize. They had not spoken with me. So I turn just for a minute to Director Fagg. In the event that these are individuals who want to speak, how do we proceed with this, Flynn?
Let's have anyone who wishes to speak on the non-public hearing items, item 4A, 4B, 4C. If you would like to speak now, we ask that you do so. You can use the, go ahead and turn on your video if you'd like to speak at this point in time.
Hello? Hello?
Yes, who do we have?
Hello?
Hello?
Hello? Hello? Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you.
Yes.
It's Mike Miller and my wife Rebecca Miller from Camino Marisol. Is this the right time to speak? Sorry, I hope I'm not interrupting.
If you'd like to go ahead and make a brief statement now, and then if the board has questions on the application, we will call you back to the meeting.
Great, thank you. And I'm trying to get video, Mr. Lyon, but I'm afraid I'm unable to get it on my iPhone. I apologize.
That's not a problem. We can hear you.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. I'll try and be brief. Oh, can you hear me now? It looks like I'm
Yes,
back on.
Yep.
we can see you and hear you. You have 3 minutes to speak.
Great. Thank you, sir. Thank you for hearing me, members of the board. My name is Mike Miller, and I'm with my wife right now, Rebecca Miller. Also on the call is our architect, Marco Simsik from Simsik and Ulrich in Vancouver, and then Martin Bruner, who's been assisting us with coordination in Palm Springs. Certainly been much appreciated in this challenging time. So my wife and I have lived or had a family property in Palm Springs for over 10 years. We had decided to purchase in Old Las Palmas approximately 3 years ago, which we did purchase a home and did a moderate remodel of an older home. All the while, we are builders in Victoria, BC, Canada, and we've always loved Palm Springs, loved Old Las Palmas. Really found it a great home away from home for us and our families, extended families. As such, we sought out to seek a property that had a great location, such as Old Las Palmas, but understanding the historical significance of Palm Springs and in particular Old Las Palmas, we were very careful and mindful in our search for over a number of years. We came across Camino Mirasol as a potential. We then reached out to Mr. Lyons, who was very helpful in helping us, guiding us through the process. We did our very best at doing extended due diligence to the best of our ability in Palm Springs. At such time, we decided to remove subjects and buy the property. We feel as though, albeit evolution changes, and we didn't see how it classed from our perspective as a class 1 or class 2 historical site. Based on those reasons, we decided to design a new home with some very qualified people assisting us. And as such, we find ourselves here we are today for your consideration of potentially granting a demolition application for the said property.
Thank you, Mike. We'll ask you if you are able to stay with us when this item comes up on the agenda. If you have further questions or if the board has comments of you or questions of you, we would appreciate it if you can stand by.
Thank you. So I'll just go off video and off mute right now, sir. And I hope I didn't drag on too long.
No, you are fine. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Is there anyone else here in the on the screen who wishes to speak during public comment? Does not appear to be the case.
Okay, seeing none, Mr. Lyon, then I will close the public comments and move to the consent calendar. Item 1A, approval of the minutes for July 7th, 2020 HSPB meeting. Does anyone have changes to the minutes? I see no hands raised. Okay. Then if none, may I have a motion to accept the minutes as presented? I have a first by Mr. Kaiser and a second by Ms. Hub. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None. Motion carries 4-0. Now we'll move on to the public hearings for which we have one. Item 2A, Nicholas Pepper, owner, requesting Class 1 historic site designation of the Franz Alexander residence located at 1011 West Cielo Drive. May I have a staff report, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair and board members. This is an application by the homeowner, Nicholas Pepper, seeking Class 1 historic site preservation designation for the Dr. Franz Alexander residence located at 1011 West Cielo Drive. In your staff report before you, there is an aerial photo showing the site, and then there's some photos of the home taken from the Historic Resources report that was taken in 1956, which shows the home on its rocky site. The Historic Resources report, which was written by Stephen Vaught, who is here available to speak during public testimony on this item, was fairly clear and detailed in terms of identifying the home's eligibility relative to the Historic Preservation Ordinance. And beginning on page 4 of your report, they look at the various characteristics or criterion for consideration. They've identified that Dr. Franz Alexander was a person of significance at a national level for his groundbreaking work in the field of psychoanalysis. And as noted in the report, he was considered the father of American psychoanalysis, similar to Sigmund Freud on an international level. So they have identified that the home qualifies as a historic site relative to persons of significance, criterion number 2. It also is identified as representing the period of Palm Springs development, the post-World War II period, in which many business owners and homeowners embraced the modern architectural style for the design of their businesses and homes. And that at this time, we really saw a departure and a break from the popularized revival styles that had been popular in the pre-World War II era. So they are identifying that the home qualifies as a historic site under criterion 3. Criterion 4 is that the resource embodies distinctive characteristics of a type, period, or method of construction. The report has identified that the building is a noteworthy example of a steel frame construction applied in a very expressive or artistic manner, with the thin steel columns, the expansive walls of glass, allowing for the flexibility in the location and placement of walls and partitions, which opens the building up to the incredible views to the south, and also the very interesting and upswept curve of the roof plane. So for these reasons, the report asserts that the Alexander residence qualifies under criterion 4. Criterion 5 is the work of a master builder, genius, or possesses high artistic value. And the report has identified that the design of the Alexander residence was designed by Walter S. White. White is one of those modern architects in the Coachella Valley who have not been fully chronicled in an academic way, but whose work is beginning to become well known. And the report explains that White's architectural career, having interned with Taliesin West under Frank Lloyd Wright and worked with notable architects such as Rudolf Schindler, John Porter Clark, and Albert Frey. His design for the Alexander residence reflects the site-specific approach and the organic architectural style that those other architects often embraced. As I mentioned earlier, the upswept roof line, can be seen as a physical expression of the windy conditions at the site, where the locally quarried stone dubbed Mexican driftwood also contributes to the home's integration with the site. So the highly expressive and organic nature of the forms gives it a strong artistic quality, thereby justifying its qualification as a historic resource under criterion 5. Those are the criteria under which this particular report asserted this particular site as having significance. Beginning on page 6 of your staff report was the analysis of integrity, those qualities being location, design, setting, materials, workmanship, feeling, and association. And as noted, the home characterizes and does qualify as having a high degree of material integrity in all of those instances. On page 7 of your report, we've identified the defining historic characteristics or the character defining features of the site. And, on page 8 of your report, the non-contributing features we believe are the guest house that was built in the 1990s, the hot tub, and the landscape. The other site-related issues that are identified as character defining from the original home's design period was the round swimming pool. And although added later, we felt that the cantilevered pendant chandelier on the east elevation was also a character defining feature. So that concludes my staff report. As noted, the report does state that this building and site is qualified as a historic resource under our code. And this is a public hearing, so you would want to open the public testimony and offer any public comment that may be available on this. That concludes my staff report. Thank you.
Thank you. Board, before I do that, are there any questions of staff? Seeing no further questions, I'll open the public hearing. Are there, I believe we do have the actual owner of the home with us. So if you would invite him to speak to us at this time.
Nick, is your microphone on?
I believe so. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead. You have 10 minutes.
Thank you guys for your
You don't have
time.
much time.
Thank you so much for your time this evening. I am really just here to say I really appreciate the consideration that the Historic Site Preservation Board's giving to the home. I'm remarkably honored and have had a great time living here and continue to live here, especially given everything that's happening in the world. And the Palm Springs Preservation Foundation has also been helping me through the process, and I wouldn't be here without them. And I obviously, fully support the nomination and promise to take care of it and make sure it stays as beautiful as it's always been. So I just appreciate everything. Thank you guys.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Nick. We greatly appreciate it. Your attention to detail that's been on this property as well. I don't believe there's anyone else wanting to speak. Is that correct, Mr. Lyon?
To the best of my knowledge, as I mentioned, Stephen Vaught, who is the author of the report, is here with us. He is the one identified by the telephone number on your screen. I don't know if he wishes to speak at this time. You could certainly ask him. Otherwise, I believe he was there to simply be available if you had any questions.
Wonderful. Mr. Vaught, would you like to speak?
I hope you can hear me. Can you?
Yes, we can.
Oh, great. Perfect. Yes, I wanted to just make myself available if anyone had any questions, since I had the honor of working on this report. This house, as you can see quite clearly, is such an extraordinary piece of mid-century modern architecture that has really, it's elevated to the level of art. And it's just, it's so encouraging that the home has such a great steward in Nicholas Pepper, who loves the house and is honoring its legacy with that. It's just, it's really amazing on so many different levels. And I'm also thrilled that Walter S. White, who is not just basically coming on the radar recently, is turning out to be someone very interesting and very exciting, and that more of his work hopefully will begin to appear, and that what we've seen of it so far has been, very interesting. So I think I had written a long report. I don't want to bore you with any more, but I did want to say again, also thank you, Honorable Board, for considering this nomination, and I hope that you approve it as a landmark.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It was a great report. We greatly appreciate the effort I know that you put into this.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much. So I don't believe there's anyone else wishing to talk. So I will close the public hearing at this time. The action will now be with the board. So board, your comments and questions, please. Mr. Vice.
I think the house is wonderful. I think what Nick has done with it is wonderful. I'd seen the house when Dr. Grimm had it. He also took care of it beautifully. And I think we're all just very, very fortunate to have Nick Pepper being in charge of it now, because it is truly a gem. I do think some of the landscaping that was originally put in should be part of this designation, but I don't know how you break that down without doing, the whole thing, because some of it's been added to over a period of time. But in all the houses, and it's actually being improved now from what it was, and that is what makes an historic property living, breathing, and loved, and that's why I'm totally in favor of this.
Thank you. I would just like to say a huge thank you to Mr. Pepper for being a good steward and your support for the designation of such a special property, and the fact that you are already been designated for the National Trust is really quite a great accomplishment as well. So board, anyone else that would like to make comments?
Yeah.
Anyone else? No?
No, you have Jade raising his hand.
Oh, Jade, sorry. Yes, please.
So I would echo both what Board Member Carver and Chair Burkett said, and congratulate you on the purchase of such an extraordinary home. And thank you for being such a great steward. I think at this time it's also worth mentioning the previous owner, Dr. Grimm, who was also a wonderful steward of the house and obviously made sure that it ended up in good hands. I would like to ask, if it's possible, that the streetscape at the front, in front of the front door, where all the boulders and desert rock and all of that is incorporated as part of the designation.
If I understood you correctly, Member Nelson, you said the streetscape, the landscape immediately in front of the entry to the home?
That's correct. Adjoining the driveway and immediately in front of and wrapping around the house.
Okay.
Is that clear?
Yes, I think so.
Okay.
Okay, seeing there are no other comments, then I'd like to ask for a motion, please. Okay, everybody's bashful, so I will make a motion.
I'll second.
Okay, that we accept the staff's report here, the resolution of the Historic Site Preservation Board for the City of Palm Springs, California, recommending the City Council designate the Bronze Alexander residence located at 1011 West Yellow Drive as a Class 1 historic site. With the amendments are the additions that Mr. Nelson has just reiterated to us to be included. So,
I'll second the motion
okay,
with those amendments.
thank you. So we have a first by Member Burkett and a second by Member Huff. May I have a vote, please? All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries 4-0. Congratulations. Well deserved.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, moving along to unfinished business. Item 3A, consideration of the updated historic resources report for the Palm Springs Racquet Club located at 2743 North Indian Canyon Drive. But I'd just like to mention that this is purely for accepting the staff's report to schedule a public hearing versus a great deal of discussion tonight. But I would ask if there are any questions that you might have of staff. So if not, I'd like to make a motion to direct staff to schedule a public hearing of the HSVB to consider possible recommendation for designation of the Palm Springs Racquet Club as an historic resource. And would ask also, as I mentioned earlier, Mr. Lyon, I think it's important that we should, for you to have, if you would, please, a discussion to make some clarification. I see that it's really needed, an important part of this for the representative.
We will do that.
Okay, thank you very much. So I have made a first. Do I have a second?
I will second.
So I have a first by Member Burkett and a second by Member Kaiser. Okay. So motion carries 4-0.
Was there a motion? I did not see everybody vote. I'm sorry.
Oh,
Yeah, I made a motion.
Did you all raise your hand or something?
Yes.
Yep. And I seconded. Now we need to vote.
Yeah. Yeah. So all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Okay, now we'll move on to new business. 4A, Jeremy Scott, owner, requesting Class 1 historic site designation of the Arthur Elrod residence located at 2175 Southbridge Drive. Board, are there questions of staff? If not? No questions? Okay, then may I have a motion to accept the recommendation by staff? Okay, then I see Ms. Hub,
Okay.
please.
I'll make a motion to direct the staff to schedule a public hearing of the HSPB to consider the possible recommendation for designation of the Arthur Elrod residence as a historic resource.
Great. And I'd be glad to second that.
I'll second.
Oh, okay. Mr. Nelson, we'll let you second. So we have a first by Ms. Hub and a second by Member Nelson.
And if I may, Mr. Chair, I just want to make it known or clear for the people that are watching that the board did receive a historic resources report via the U.S. mail prior to this meeting. The report was prepared by an outside firm, Chattel Incorporated, and so that is the basis upon which this recommendation is being made.
Thank you. Are there any other further discussion amongst the board? Seeing none, those in favor, please raise your hand.
Aye.
Those opposed? None. The motion carries 4-0. Our next item is 4B. Mike Miller, owner, requesting approval to demolish the existing dwelling located at 1175 Camino Marisol, a Class 4 site. May I have a staff report, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. And before I begin my staff report, I do want to acknowledge that there were materials that were provided to all the board members, which was prepared by Member Nelson, and that material was forwarded to you via email prior to this meeting. Relating to the staff report, as noted, this is an application by Mr. Miller to request demolition of a Class 4 historic site located at 1175 Camino Marisol. In your staff report, you'll note that the single-family residence is noted as having been constructed in 1947 according to building permit records. The current owner took possession of the property in August of 2019. The property comprises a single-family residence in an L-shaped configuration with a swimming pool and landscaping. The applicant provided materials which are attached to the staff report. That was their due diligence in doing research to determine if there was anything significant in the local records, the Historical Society, and others that may give the board information in making your determination. So you have in your staff report attached the building permit records as well as the documentation of the research that they did on the site and photographs. The analysis that we've done based on the material provided to us that begins in your staff report on page 3. And we've noted that as you go through this, the various criteria that determines whether a site has exceptional historic significance, we were not able to make any of those findings affirmatively based on the material that was presented. Also, as it comes to the matter of integrity, there are some factors of integrity that the home does have that are intact. Location, the design is pretty much the same. There was some additions that the board observed through your site visits last week and earlier this week in the form of the patio cover off the rear side of the home. The setting of materials and workmanship remain essentially the same and unchanged from its time of original construction. And as we noted on page 5 of your staff report, we did not find anything in terms of association or feeling that would demonstrate a particular notable integrity about this site. So our conclusion in reviewing the application materials is that the home does not possess historic significance necessary to warrant reclassification to a Class 1 or Class 2 site. And therefore, our recommendation to the board today is that the HSPB take no action and allow the applicant to proceed with the demolition of the site. As noted, Mr. Miller is still with us on your screen. If you have any questions of him, he's available to answer your questions, and I'm available to answer questions as well. Thank you.
So board, are there questions of staff? Are there any board comments? Mr. Nelson?
I have a question of the applicant. Would now be the time?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
So just as a matter of curiosity, my question is, what is replacing the structure that is proposed to be demolished? Is it in the same style of architecture? Is it modern? Is it contemporary? Is it Spanish Revival? Can the applicant answer that?
Thank you, sir. I'll do the very best job I can, and if I may, if appropriate, I might bring in Marco Simsek, the lead architect on this project. I would say, if I could just give a bit of background, I'll be very brief. I've been a builder for 25 years, award-winning builder in Canada, been in Architectural Digest, and for the past decade, and more in particular the last 3 years, we focused a lot on we feel queues within the old Las Palmas neighborhood, and there are so many variations of the queues to pick up on. And I'm going on a limb here describing the architecture as in one little bit here on Marco's behalf. But I would say the architecture is sympathetic to old Las Palmas. I would say it has modern attributes, not necessarily contemporary, but modern attributes. It is not in picking up in the Spanish Revival theme, but it's very articulately designed to read low in keeping with the lower ceiling heights very common in the old Las Palmas and other areas within Palm Springs. So again, I don't want to pigeonhole the design. I would say it's strong elements, delicate cornice lines, but very simple and demonstrative. It's certainly not in our mind a modern a contemporary current box. It's sympathetic, but not trying to replicate at the same time. I hope that I did a good job explaining it, sir. I apologize in advance.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I hope Marco doesn't hang me for it later.
Okay. Mr. Nelson, any other comments?
No.
Any other? Mr. Kaiser.
I have a comment. I think people need to know that Old Las Palmas was created out of 2 tracks at 2 different times. Renee Brown gave a wonderful presentation to the Old Las Palmas neighborhood organization at one of our annual meetings and explained this. The dividing line was Via Lola West. That was the Morito tract. That was the original 20s, where the biggest, grandest, handcrafted houses were built. Later, the Las Palmas tract, which is from Lola East, where this house is located, the lots were smaller. A lot of different styles got built. It was not nearly as prestigious as the Morito tract. And so there are many houses that have been built in this area, which were just sort of thrown up by a builder to make some money. A lot of those have been scrubbed now. This house has no redeeming features to me. The lot is great. The house is not great enough for the lot. So I am in favor of allowing the demolition to go forward.
Thank you. I would just like to put out one thought, that the permit be predicated on approved plans for the new structure. I'm not quibbling over allowing the demolition, but Mr. Lyon, is that not possible to do?
Well, you don't have to do anything, especially in that way. Your ordinance is written to require that.
Yeah, I thought so, but I said we really don't have to do anything, right? Okay.
What will occur tonight is if you choose to take no action and allow this demolition to move forward, is that the home will have the HSPB's okay to demolish. The demo permit will not be issued until the actual application of the new structure is made to the building department.
Yeah, great. I just wanted that clarification. Thank you so much. So, there are not any other questions? Oh, Ms. Hubb.
I just wanted to make the comment that I thank Jade for doing your tremendous research into the provenance of the house, leaving no stone unturned, so to speak, of the ownership and the builder, and I really appreciate Jade, your conscientious efforts in looking into every possible detail so that we clearly understand the property. And I want to thank you very much for that. Good work, Jade.
My pleasure. Thank you.
But in light of all that, I support the position not to take any action, but to direct the staff to proceed with the demolition permit. And I would like to make that motion.
Wonderful. So,
I will second that.
okay, so we have a motion by Member Huff and a second by Member Kaiser.
Hold on. I have more comments on this.
Okay, of course.
Sorry. So I know that you all received the information that I sent via email. I just think it's important to state for the record, in the justification letter that staff provided, the first paragraph after the listing of the 7 criteria, they say that there is not a notable builder along with architect designer. And true, there was not a notable architect or designer, but there was a notable builder, and his name was H.H. Foster. And that was part of the biography of information that I sent to everyone, Herbert Henry Foster. And I think it's just important that it be stated for the record who he was and what he did here. He was a resident Plum Springs pioneer for over 50 years. And he was not only a prominent local building contractor, according to the Desert Sun, but he was also a realtor, appraiser, and developer who was extremely active in the growth and development of the greater Plum Springs area. He arrived in 1934 when he began his business with the construction of what is now known as part of the former Orchid Tree Inn. His first office was on the grounds of the Desert Inn. He was vice president of the Palm Springs Business Men's Association and helped found the Chamber of Commerce. After getting his broker's license in 1940, he opened his own firm. And later on, he was appointed to the board of directors for the Chamber of Commerce and was granted membership in the American Institute of Real Estate Appraisers. His project list is very, very extensive. And he was responsible, along with many other things, for the construction of several homes at Smoke Tree Ranch and all of the rental units at the Racket Club and all remodeling there between 1946 and the early 80s. So I just want the record to reflect that he was indeed an important person in the history of Palm Springs. He was an important builder, contrary to the staff report. And this is just a glimpse into his legacy and his career. And I thank you for allowing me the time to share that. One other thing is that I do believe those 3 homes in a row on Camino Mirasol were developed by him because they all share certain similarities in terms of the layout and the eaves and the red tile roofs and so forth. And if you look at Desert Sun ads from the period, he has a lot of ads advertising new homes that he developed and built in Las Palmas or Las Palmas. So that's all I have to say on that, and I will be in support of the demolition permit.
Thank you. Mr. Lyon.
I just want to clarify that the material that Jade provided will be added to the city case file on this particular site. And so the material that he just shared with us will be part of the permanent case file here in the office. And then I just want to also clarify that the reference that he is making to the justification letter is the justification letter by the applicant. That was not authorship by staff.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
And I really want to acknowledge, again, follow up with Member Huff, how important this is when board members take interest to really sort of dig in and to really do that minutia research that not all of us have talents for. So it's greatly appreciated. And also, I think it was a great for Member Kaiser to remind us about the structure of the Las Palmas neighborhoods, because I think that does get often lost in translation. So these kinds of constant, I think, reminders are very, very healthy for our board and for going forward in the future. So I thank you very much for that. So I don't believe there's any other comments. We have a motion on the table now. We have a first and a second. So I'd like to call for a vote. For all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Your hand. Okay, any opposed? Well, there can't be any opposed. Everybody raised their hand. So so the motion carries 4-0.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. And thank you for your great work down in Palm Springs.
Thanks, Mike.
Okay, have a good evening, everyone. Thank you.
So now we're going to move on to the item 4C, the Illuminaire House Foundation, on behalf of the Palm Springs Art Museum, requesting approval for the alterations to the Palm Springs Art Museum located at 101 Museum Drive. May I have a staff report, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. As noted in your staff report, this is a proposal to relocate and rebuild the Illuminaire House on the portion of the south parking lot of the Palm Springs Art Museum. And the Art Museum is a Class 1 historic site. In your packet, you will find an exhibit which shows you approximately where on the south parking lot the Illuminaire House is proposed to be erected. And to describe it briefly for those people watching, it's located on the southernmost part of the parking lot in an area that is, and I think Ms. Conrad will probably be able to clarify this a bit. I believe that the museum is looking to create kind of a landscaped sculpture garden of some type around that. And Tracy, if I've misspoken on that, please correct me. But the reason that I noted this as a recommendation to approve with conditions is to acknowledge that this is likely to be a two-phase project. The first project, of course, is seeking the board's certificate of appropriateness to make this alteration to the museum site by placing the Illuminaire House on the site. And as we've evaluated this at a staff level, our belief and assertion in the staff report is that while the Illuminaire House stands in dramatic contrast to the architecture of the Art Museum, and both buildings, of course, have extraordinary significance from a historic and architectural perspective, we do not believe that the proposal impairs the historic integrity of the Art Museum, nor does it visually impair one's ability to observe the Art Museum building, or for that matter, it does not cause a problem for those wishing to also observe the Illuminaire House once it is installed. So we believe that it's an appropriate location. The siting of it is respectful of the existing Art Museum and provides a remarkable opportunity for the Art Museum to exhibit this pretty amazing structure. So that concludes my staff report. We are recommending that you grant the certificate of appropriateness for the location of the Illuminaire House as shown. We're available to answer any questions, and I believe Tracy is here representing the applicant.
Thank you. Just before we get to Ms. Conrad, I just have a question of staff. So I noted that in the contributing factors, features, that the character defining features, sorry, in the report did not include the steep chase wing. Is there a reason that that was not mentioned?
No reason in particular, no. You can say it's an oversight, we can certainly add it. As I noted in the staff report, normally with our contemporary resolutions, when things are designated, we have the resolution include the character defining features of the site. However, older sites such as this one did not have that listed in the resolution. So the Steve Chase Wing can certainly be added if you wish to do so as a character defining feature.
I think it would be, yeah, I think it would just be good for the record. I think that's an important, a very, very important part of this. So are there any other questions of staff before I invite Ms. Conrad to speak? Okay, any questions, Ms. Conrad? Member Huff.
I have a question to Ken Lyon, if I may, please. Ken, I noticed in the plan, there's to be remaining, 20 parking places in the south parking lot. Is it necessary to have those 20 parking places? I would find that they may be disruptive to the visual, the dialogue between the buildings and the gardens. We also have the Arthur Elrod sculpture garden that's, recessed, below the street level. I'm just asking a question about, are those 20 places to park cars absolutely required with all the parking that's planned across the street? I was just questioning the visual dialogue that would happen.
In answer to your question, Member Huff, we did not do a parking analysis as part of this analysis of this particular application. The parking lots that are there, both the north lot and the south lot, were part of the original development of the Palm Springs Art Museum. Museums are parked according to the city's off-street parking ordinance, section 93.06 of the zoning code. And they are parked based on the number of square footages allocated per parking space. And while Tracy offers any comments that she wants to offer, I will tell you, this is one of those few moments when there's a benefit to being at my desk, because I can pull up the zoning code here for you and answer the question in terms of what the parking ratios are. But generally speaking, we did not analyze the adequacy of on-site parking. Generally, I suspect, without doing the analysis, the museum site itself is probably underparked. And the city's ordinance does require that a building or use be able to be fully parked on its site. And that if parking is inadequate, that the building owner identify alternative ways of satisfying the parking requirements. Yes, certainly the museum patrons regularly use the city's parking structure across the street. So from a practical point of view and a common sense point of view, there seems to be adequate parking in the vicinity of the museum. The site plan that you see in which some of those parking spaces are still retained is the site design that was proposed by the Luminaire Foundation, and so we've not commented on it.
Thank you.
Chair Burkett,
Yes, Mr. Nelson.
if I may, I would like to add something to that, because my only major question on this application was concerning the parking as well. And kind of opposite of what Member Huff had asked about. If I'm correct, I had observed that the current number of existing parking spaces at this time was about 43 or so, with about 6 of those being handicapped. And it looks like it's going to go down to about 20 or 21. And my question is that enough parking? And will the museum really be able to rely on the underground parking across the way? Will it be advertised and marketed enough so that people will know to go park in the underground structure and where to come up to cross over and get to the museum? Because I know over the last few years, with all of the downtown development and the problems with museum membership, and now of course with the pandemic, that accessibility has become an issue that is very important to the museum to increase visibility. And I know that people are very fickle in this town about parking. And if they can't park right in front or right next door, they might just move on and do the next best thing. So that was my concern. Is there enough parking? And also on the plan, it shows a 4-foot high concrete block wall being built all around the perimeter of the Illuminaire site and the new proposed gardens. I think that's wonderful because it will help protect the building, obviously, but my concern is with the corner of the wall that's in the middle of the parking lot, which I guess would be the northwest corner, and just wondering if that should come to a perfect 90-degree angle, or maybe it should be buffered or curved or have a little planter around it just to prevent any cars from possibly hitting it. And that's really all I have on this application.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your comments. Ms. Conrad, would you like to make some comments, please?
Certainly, I'm honored to be representing the museum as well as the Illuminaire Foundation at the HSPB to ask for permission to erect the Illuminaire house on the south parking lot of the museum. You all have interesting points. Let me say that this is a conceptual drawing for what will get a fully fleshed out landscape design. And the idea of placing it on the south parking lot, many of you are familiar with the fact that the Illuminaire house entertained offers from both the College of the Desert and the museum about the placement of the house in Palm Springs. It has an amazing architectural history, and both of those sites were incredible potential places to bring this piece of architecture to Palm Springs. The architects that have shepherded the Illuminaire house for now some 30 years very much like the downtown site because of how many people would be able to walk to it, as well as it was in view or in proximity to the Frey 2 house, which is also part of the museum's collection. And they ultimately selected this site rather than the new College of the Desert West Campus site at the old Palm Springs Mall. So the reason for the placement here is because the museum has asked for it. We've retained the handicap parking for now. I think the museum, it's not a big secret, would propose to make the entire south parking lot into a sculpture garden. And I think they will apply to the city regarding their availability of parking. I feel like I get told a lot that parking ratios are outdated because everyone uses Uber, although I see that Lyft is moving out of the state of California. So the parking is certainly something that the museum thought long and hard about before they offered the south parking lot site. And as Ken alluded to, the idea that it would be a phased project is that we want to erect the Illuminaire. It will bring all sorts of interest and attention, and it will require landscaping around it and potentially a full-blown plan by the museum for sculpture in the remainder of those spots. And the museum obviously did its own analysis, thinking that there's plenty of parking over 300 spaces across the street, and people coming to the museum in alternative transportation or by walking. So we would be very pleased if the Historic Site Preservation Board would give us a certificate of appropriateness and we could get on with erecting the Illuminaire here in Palm Springs. And I can certainly pass on any concerns or conditions that the HSPB has regarding how to site it as we develop full construction drawings to submit to the city.
Thank you. Really greatly. Yeah, Mr. Lyon?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to just clarify a couple of things on parking. First of all, the museum is in the Central Business District zone. As such, it is subject to the requirements of the downtown parking combining zone. It's like an overlay zone that allows lesser parking for those uses in the downtown area. For mixed-use developments which exceed 20,000 gross square feet, it's 1 parking space for every 375 gross square feet of floor area. So that's what can be done in terms of analysis if we wish to do so. But what's more important for the board to consider is that also within the parking ordinance, there is an exemption for Class 1 historic sites. And it says that if the Class 1 historic site has intensified use, that it does not have to provide additional parking for that intensified use. So typically you would think of a building that might be a retail use. It would be parked at a ratio of 1 space for every 200 square feet. But if it were to become a restaurant, it's parked at 1 space for every 35 square feet. So parking is significantly greater for a restaurant when you have a building that's downtown, that's a Class 1 historic site where they're intensifying the use. That's no different than what's really going on here with the museum. The museum site is being quote unquote intensified with the addition of the Illuminaire House. But because of its status as a Class 1 historic site, the intensified use does not require that additional parking be provided. And I think as Member Nelson pointed out appropriately, we have all believed for many, many years here in Palm Springs that a free parking space within 10 feet of the place we're going is part of our entitlement as residents here. And as our city keeps on building out, we may need to learn to walk a little bit farther. But I do believe in this particular case, the parking, both through the Class 1 exemption and through the availability of structured parking across the street from the museum, will likely provide adequate parking.
Thank you. I'd just like to make a couple of comments too. In discussions with the management, speaking of the COD with the museum management, another added advantage of having the house at the museum is it can be utilized still as a lab or of sorts for the COD Cal Poly Pomona proposed 5-year School of Architecture, which is really great. So those students will still have the opportunity to experience the house. And when you think about the aspect of the sustainability and the experimentation with happening with aluminum and steel for mass housing back of that period, which is the same thing we're now dealing with back in 2020, it is going to be a great lab and a great source. So that's really a win-win, I think, for everybody. And so I am wholeheartedly supporting this endeavor. And I think how fortunate we are to have this structure in our city. I mean, it's a major contribution to the Frey collection. And I am really thrilled to see that this has come to us. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Okay. Any other comments from the board? Nelson.
A question for the applicant. Just out of curiosity, is the management of the admission to the Illuminaire House going to be managed by the museum? Will it be a separate admission ticket, or will it be included in museum admission? I'm curious.
Well, that's a very good question, Jade. I think the idea is that there's a long history to how the Illuminaire Foundation in California happened and how we procured the house, bringing it here to Palm Springs, and now are going to erect it. And the idea is that it will be subsumed by the museum, and that the Illuminaire Foundation in California will be dissolved, and the museum will acquire the Illuminaire House as a piece of architecture. And how they program it, or how they imagine allowing entrance to it, will be up to the museum. Louis Grouchos, the executive director, has a lot of ideas regarding that. And one of the things that's nice about having it on this site is that people can still enjoy it even when, from the outside. It will still be visible from Museum Drive as well as Tockwitz. It will get landscaping to protect it because of the harsh south sun, but it's something that people will still be able to see. and then, theoretically look up the hill to see Frey too. Although I argue you really can't see it unless you're standing in the middle of Tockwitz. But anyway, it's in proximity to it. And, they are going to do some programming at the ADC about it as well. And it's a really interesting idea to see the entire arc of Albert Frey's work from his first job, the Illuminaire, in when he arrives to his whole lifetime of work here in Palm Springs. So the museum is extremely excited about it. Whether they charge to go in it or have cocktail parties around it will be wait to be seen.
Great. Thank you for clarifying.
Certainly.
Okay, I think there are no other comments. May I have a motion to accept the recommendation by staff? Ms. Hub?
I'll make a recommendation to grant the certificate of appropriateness with conditions as deemed necessary.
Thank you very much, and I'd be happy to second that. So we have a first by Member Huff and a second by Member Burkett. I'd like to take a vote, please. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, there's no opposed, so the motion carries 4-0. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We appreciate all the work that you've done on this. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Okay, so great night. We're going to move on to some discussions. Very exciting program we're talking about next is the annual work plan. Staff, if you would share the proposed work plan with the board.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you all for participating in the tallying of these sites. As you know, there were 9 sites that were identified over the course of the summer in your last board meeting that the board was contemplating as being possibilities to put on your work plan for the fiscal year 2021. So between the last meeting and this meeting, I sent out email correspondence to you with the list of those 9 sites, which I'll read to you, and then you all ranked them and provided me with your rankings, which I have scored. And there is a staff memo in your packet that you have this evening, which summarizes your prioritization of these sites. For those watching, I'll just briefly list what the sites were that you were considering. They were the Caraquia Pension, the Arabi Rock Houses, Fire Station number 4, a single-family dwelling at 545 South Calle Palo Fierro, the La Horizon Hotel, the Willard Martin Residence, single-family residence referred to as the Arabi Adobe, the gas company building, and a single-family residence known as Amin Casa. From your rankings, the top 5 were identified, and that is in your memo. I'll note that the 2 second place placeholders both received scorings of equal value. So I've listed them as 1, 2, 2, and 3 and 4. But the rankings as you scored them is that your number 1 priority is the Caraquia Pension. The 2 second place sites were the Arabi Adobe and the gas company building. The 3rd site was the Willard Martin Residence, and the 4th site was Fire Station number 4. So our recommendation for you at this time is to identify what you would like to establish as your work plan priorities for sites to consider working on for making nominations to the City Council for potential Class 1 or Class 2 historic site designation. You could choose to do any of these, none of these, all of these, or some combination of them. I would only remind you, as it does note at the bottom of your memo, that these are processed at a staff level after any public applications are received. So both because we are dealing with some staff cuts this year, as well as some funding cuts in terms of the HSPB's budget funding from past years, we probably are not going to be able to take on as many as we might like. That doesn't mean that you can't put everything that you want on the work plan and prioritize them. So with that, I'll shut up and let you guys deliberate on this and let us know how you would like to arrange your work plan.
I have a thought that I'd like to share with the board. Since we have a tie on the two twos, the Arabi Adobe and the gas company, realizing that we would probably most likely within a year's time only be able to do two, very likely. So if that being the case, I think we do need to make a decision between those two as what's going to be two and what's going to be, actually number three, just so that staff knows and we know, what that priority is going to be. So let's assume that the Karaki is let's say that nomination has been done. Now it's like, do we decide now, Kim, about between the two, or should we do that at a later time?
I think if the board has a strong feeling about one or the other, you can discuss it today, and you may find out that as you think about it a little bit more, that one site does feel more compelling to you than another. So it's up to the board. You could either make that decision now and identify it that way and say that 2A or 2B, or you can just leave it and see how far we're able to get through the work plan. It's up to you.
I would just like to, my thought on this is the gas company. It's one of the very few brutalist examples that we have in the city, and I think it's such an important one, and we're fortunate to have it. So, I'll lead in with what my preference would be, but it's just my preference, and this should be a board decision, not just mine. But that's my reasoning for it, and it's a hard decision because, between the two, there's no question about it. But I do think it's important that we do come to grips with this. Or I also might suggest, Kim, that we defer this maybe between those two to the next meeting where we have our additional board members. That might be a more fair thing to do. If the board.
That's perfectly fine as well. Either way is appropriate.
Board, what are your thoughts on that? Should we defer it? Yeah. Member Kaiser?
I would like to defer it and let other people weigh in as well. I'm so conflicted between the gas company and the Arabi Adobe. The gas company building is they're so entirely different. And the Arabi Adobe is very difficult to see. So it's almost like a private piece as a designation, whereas the gas company building is much more public. Right. And so that, to me, is a very important part of this, so that we have more public buildings that are designated so that people can, like the Marshall's book, look in a book of commercial properties that are designated and take a tour. So that pushes me towards that, but I think we should have the other members weigh in as well.
I agree. Member Nelson?
Yeah, I think it's important we have this discussion today while it's on our agenda, and we can talk about it again next time as well. But if you think we're only able to do two, I think we should pick three, just in case there's an opportunity to be able to do a third property. Excuse me. My first two were the Arabi Adobe #1 and the gas company #2. I chose the Arabi Adobe as my first priority because there is nothing currently that I'm aware of that's designated in Arabi, and it is one of the oldest communities in town. Yep. That Adobe is owned by the owner and publisher of Pumpkin Black Magazine, and it is significant And when I was a young boy growing up here, one of our homes was adjacent to that neighborhood. And we would ride our bike by that adobe every weekend, just to go up there and see it. It was so special. And every time I drive up there and see it, I get this wonderful feeling because it looks exactly the same as it did 40 years ago when I would ride my bike by. And so I think it's really crucial that it's time for us as a board to acknowledge that Irby is historic. It's a historic resource, and that is the perfect first house to begin with for that area. And the gas company building, the current owner, I believe, is the same owner as the corridor in Uptown Palm Springs at the corner of Vallejo and Palm Canyon. The corridor is where coffee is and Chicken Ranch and Brian O'Brien's belong. And he is a huge proponent of adaptive reuse and rehabilitation and restoration. And I believe, or I don't believe, I know, he was approached by Palm Springs Modern Committee with a packet of historical information on the gas company. They gave him some old articles and photographs and stories that were published in Palm Springs Life after it was built. And we all know it's Robert Ricciardi, and he has not been acknowledged. So I think he's overdue for recognition. So I would advocate for those two being in the top two, with Kalakia or the Morton House being a close third. And those are my thoughts.
Okay, Mr. Lyon.
And if I may, don't feel shy. If you guys want to have 5 as your work plan list, don't be afraid to do that. Just, have a realistic understanding that you might not make it through all 5. You might only get 1 or 2 done, but don't feel shy if you want to keep 5 on your list. That's entirely up to you.
Oh, I think we should keep 5 on the list. It's just a matter of how they're going to be listed in priority. Ms. Huff, I have a feeling you live up in that's your turf. What are your thoughts?
Well, of course, I love the Arabi adobe, which is called the El Dumpo adobe. It's real close to my heart. I mean, it's historic. It has the original integrity. Frank has done an incredible job conserving the original intact, as well as preservation. It's real adobe. It's not plastered over. He has people come from New Mexico that know how to do adobe with straw to preserve and maintain that structure. It's incredible, I'm very close to that.
You could twist my arm. I mean, it's really tough. So I think everybody's in agreement, Mr. Lyon, that we should put this back on our agenda for the month of October, when we have more board members that can join in.
It's fine.
Okay, that sounds good.
That's fine.
Okay, so we've covered that, and now we're ready for 5B, which is conference planning. The yesterday and tomorrow conference coming up. So just a couple of comments about that. Actually, the conference has been renamed to Fast Forward, Designing the Future of Palm Springs. And indeed, it is scheduled for the Modernism Week fall preview on October the 15th as the opening day. But just so that you know, when one buys a ticket, they'll be able to also watch at their own leisure. And there was so much rich content in here that it's actually 3 2-hour sessions, so that it's broken into these various parts for a total of 6 hours. So have more information on that very shortly, and I'll give it to Mr. Lyon to pass on to everybody with the actual agenda. But it's going to be quite all-inclusive, which I'm really thrilled with think I might have mentioned before, with the City Council and the Planning Commission, the AAC and the HSPB with input. So more about that coming up very, very soon. So that's all I have with that. So it's now time for board comments. I have some, but I'm going to ask the board if anybody else has any first, to be polite. Okay, I have just a couple. Mr. Land, is there any possible status update about the cork and bottle? Or is it kind of a victim of COVID and it's sort of sitting there? Which
I happened to go by there the other day and noticed that it seems to be idle, as so many projects are in downtown and throughout the city. We have not had any communication directly with the building owners, but I believe it probably the reason we're seeing it kind of in a stalled state is probably a victim of COVID, as you described.
Okay, yeah, I kind of thought that would be the case. It's unusual times for certain, and we have to be adaptive, and I understand that as well. So the other question I have, Mr. Land, is there any update as to the Historic Preservation Ordinance 8.05 amendment request being scheduled for City Council? Is that still maybe coming up in October or November?
I believe it's coming up on the September 10th City Council agenda. So it's coming up, I believe, next week. Lynn, you can correct me if I'm wrong on that.
That is correct. It is coming up for the September 10th City Council meeting at this point.
That's great news. Thank you. I'm really looking forward to that, obviously. So my last item is I plan to schedule an event subcommittee meeting in September to discuss the potential our Preservation Matters annual conference as a potential virtual conference that was postponed due to COVID. And that subcommittee, again, that would be Catherine, Dan, myself, and Mr. Fagg. So I'll get with Mr. Fagg about possible times that we could have a Zoom conference, not a conference, but a Zoom session meeting to have some discussion about that so we can make some decisions going forward. So that is all that I have. Yes, Member Nelson.
3 board member comments from me. I'll try to keep it quick. My first is on the Wacky Club. And basically, it's a rebuttal to the public comment that was made by the current owner's representative. She said in her comment that there wasn't really a buyer who had come forth who was interested in restoring the Wacky Club and restoring the historic resources. And that's not true. I personally know of a buyer who has made 2 offers now. And she's very serious. And she really wants to restore the property. She agrees that it should become a historic resource, that should be designated. And they don't really seem to show any interest in her offer. So I think that they're being a little vague or not upfront with the reality of who has approached them and who has made offers. So that's one thing. The second thing is just wondering if it would be possible for staff to reach out to us as board members a little earlier on when they know they have a property coming up for demolition, rather than, at the time of the posting of the agenda or, just before that, because I think some of us, or all of us actually, could help contribute to the research that staff does and, help them with their work, or take a load off of them, so to speak. So just wondering if that's something that you would entertain. And the third thing is Bank of America. I brought that up at the last meeting. Some of the tile, the blue tile had fallen off, and also some flyers have been papered up on the blue tile. And I see that there's been no corrective action yet. I'm just wondering if they were informed.
At the end of your comments?
Yep.
On the question of B of A, I've not had an opportunity to speak with them. If you feel so inclined to do so, it would be helpful if you might want to submit a code complaint to the city on a matter of building maintenance that's needed there to do the repair and the removal of the stuck-on paper. That would help a lot in terms of our ability to get to that. Number two, on your question about giving the board early notice of the receipt of applications, yes, we can do that as well. And I can try to make that a regular habit for you. On the matter of the Racquet Club, yes, there seems to be varying levels of enthusiasm about how the property gets moved forward. I understand from speaking with the individual today, just prior to your meeting, the property is being listed by Colliers Realty for $5.5 million. And they expressed verbally that they are very eager to move it forward. We have corresponded with them on a number of occasions. The last time that matter came before the board for consideration, you directed staff to reach out to the owner in what we called constraints and opportunities. And we laid it out in writing to them what we saw as the constraints and opportunities related to the site. So they verbally stated an interest in speaking further with staff today. We can certainly do outreach again to them and see whether that manifests itself.
Great, thank you, Ken.
You're welcome.
And to that point, that's why I asked for the discussion about clarification, because one of the comments that was made was that we were asking for the entire property, and that is really not the case, as been proven through work studies that we've had with a former interested party. So I just think that discussion again, and maybe those things, will help alleviate some of the concern and the tension amongst for an owner, because again, we're dealing with myths. We seem to, this seems to be a continual issue that we deal with. So I think that is very, very important meeting, and I'm just thrilled that you agreed to do that outreach. Ken, that very, very much appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other comments from the board? Well, it's been a great night, and I think it's now time for the adjournment of the Historic Site Preservation Board.
Any staff comments?
Oh, I thought I'd ask everybody again. Any other comments?
I've asked for board comments. I don't feel like I'm part of the board. I feel like I have to answer under staff comments.
Right.
Sorry, I shouldn't be so anxious here. So,
I just wanted to give you a couple of items of update. I forwarded to you a little photo montage on the soon to be fully completed Wellwood Murray Memorial Library courtyard. And I think that's a project that's come off fairly well, given the many, many constraints that were associated with it. And, I think the board's insistence that it be studied a bit more carefully compared to what the original design proposal was, has yielded a very positive final product. And I think it's one for which the city can be proud. The second thing I wanted to make note of is that the Las Palmas Liquors Store recommendation for Class 1 designation will be going to the City Council also on the September 10th City Council meeting. That concludes my comments. Flynn, did you have any other comments that you wanted to share?
No, I don't have any comments at this time.
Okay. That's it for us then. Thank you.
Again, and my sincere apologies of all things. Yeah. Sorry about that. Okay, I think it's now time that I should call for an adjournment. The Historic Site Preservation Board will adjourn to its regularly scheduled meeting on Tuesday, October the 5th, 2020 at 5:30 p.m. And at a site to be determined. At this point, most likely it'll be virtual. So until then, wish everybody good health and happiness, and we'll meet soon. Thank you so much. Good night.
Everyone, good night.
Night. Thanks again, Flynn, very much.